Hello traders, Corey Mitch here with TradeThatSwing.com. In this video I'm talking about a different website, Edgeful. Very interesting statistic I found, which I think is very helpful. If you look at my best day trading stocks list, I have a column that says average daily range. That is the average movement the price moves intraday over 30 days, or we can average it over any number of days. That's useful for basically scanning and saying, hey, these stocks move a lot during the day. But wouldn't it be nice to know that, okay, the stock moves 10% a day on average, but you only trade from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. How much does the price move during that time you specifically trade? Well, Edgeful has given you your answer. So there's all sorts of things you can go through in here. There's a link below to check it out. And so, yeah, you can look at gap fills. How often do opening candles continue in a certain direction? Or if the day opens with a green candle, how does that affect the rest of the day? If there's an opening range breakout, how often does the price continue running? How often does it reverse? Those types of days. If the price opens above the prior range, how often does it reverse, continue? It's just so much stuff to go through. But I like this one. So intraday window. So I've set this Rigetti. It's on the best swing trading stocks list. Another one that I like is Cypher, also on the best day trading stocks list. And so I have this set to month. So I don't need a ton of data. I want to know what this stock's doing recently. You could even go the last couple weeks or so by just picking your date in here. We'll just leave it at a month for this. And we can see, so this is during the day from 9:30 till 4. This is Eastern time. Typical movement about close to 13% a day. The smallest daily movement, 6.94%. The max daily move we've seen close to 23%. Now that's high to low. This is non-directional. It's simply the distance between the high and low. So basically the daily range, once it's formed, this is what the data is measuring. But as we said, you may not trade all day. So if you're only trading till 11:30, this is more of the movement you'd expect. So you can see it didn't drop a ton in this case, but for some stocks it may, right? Maybe the morning's a little quiet and then it gets going later in the day. Or if you can only trade till 10 o'clock, you're only trading that opening half hour. Okay, so now, yeah, the daily movement's 12% on average, but you're typically only going to average about 7% in that half an hour you're trading. So if you're going for these huge targets and they're not getting hit, that could explain why. Sure, you may get a big runner during that first half hour, but on average, this is what you're looking at. You could also go by your trade times. So let's say you have your morning flurry, and then you could run data like if you notice, man, I'm like really struggling after 10:30. I find like between 10:30 and noon I don't make any money. So you could set that to noon and you could set this to 10:30, and you might see, okay, there's pretty good movement there. What about between 11 and noon? Ooh, it drops off a lot. So maybe if you're going for those big targets, maybe this is why you're getting impatient, or maybe the market just isn't moving, and what was happening earlier, you're expecting those big movements, and then they start to fade at different times of day. The range, the amount the price is moving is getting smaller. You have to wait longer to be rewarded, etc. So you can maybe find what the issue is by digging into some of this data. So that's cool, just the time frame part. If you wanted to get really specific, you can then go by weekday, because weekdays do tend to have different tendencies. So I'm recording this on a Thursday, 17%, 10% average daily range on a Monday. That's pretty significant. That's almost double. So Thursdays have been moving almost twice as much as a Monday. Tuesday, 13%. So the scale changes between the days. So just because this blue line, we go from Monday, the blue line's way up here. Notice the scale change. So always look at this number. So Monday we're at 11%. Tuesday we're at 13%. Wednesdays 11%. Thursdays maybe a bit of an outlier. It's quite a bit more volatile day, and then we're back to 12%. So most of these other days kind of similar, with Thursday being a bit of an outlier. And even though the max isn't that much bigger, these other ones are all, well, that one's 16, Wednesday 12, 21, 13. So a couple of these days have had some really big outliers, which might help pull up the average a little bit. So we can do this by day, by time, and then, you could set this for your specific time. So if you're done by 10:30, then you could look at, okay, we're on a Thursday, what can I expect? Okay, wow, minimum movement on a Thursday in the first hour of the day, 7% of movement. That is well worth noting. Quite a bit smaller on a Wednesday, but the average still pretty good. Average about 7%. And this is the minimum. So that's the minimum value we've seen, and it's based on the last month. So if we got a really low movement day tomorrow, that where it only moves 3%, now your minimum range would be 3%. This isn't a prediction of the price has to move a minimum of 4.9% or it has to move an average of 7.3%. This is simply based on the last month. The maximum move we had in this hour on a Wednesday was 12.5%, and the minimum move was 4.8%. If a bigger move happens on a Wednesday, then we'll get a bigger number here. If a smaller number happens, we'll get a smaller number here, and each new data point will change the average slightly. So if next Wednesday we get a 10% move during that first hour, this is going to bump up a little bit because it's higher than the average. If we only move 5%, then this average is going to come down a little bit. So it's dynamic. It's not predictive, but it does tell us a lot about how price is moving. And you could look at that for potential targets. If you find, okay, we're starting to bottom out here, we've only moved 2%, 3%, and we're starting to move to the upside, there's a good chance that we could move at least another 2% to the upside, 3% to the upside to hit this minimum 4%. We have this bottoming pattern coming in, and price is starting to move up. So if we have our low down here, measuring from the low up to the minimum, 4.9%, if we think that low is in, at least for the next little while, then this would be a good place to target. And then you could potentially get some out at the average too. So you've noticed this bottoming pattern, or maybe we're just continuing to trend and we're building structure to the upside. These could be potential targets. Get some out here, get some out here, maybe trail some for the potential for a bigger runner, because we can see the data does support that the price can move a lot in this first hour. And we could, or same thing, the price is now starting to round off. It looks like we're topping out. We're starting to build structure to the downside. Where would you want to put your targets? Well, if we've only moved 3% for the entire day, right, we're here and we're rolling over and it looks like, that top might be in, then from that high, you would want to target 4.9% to the downside, 4.9% from that high. So from the high point measuring down, because we're likely to fulfill these ranges. So if you have a high or low in place, you're measuring from that high or low, which you think is in place, down. So if we've topped out, look, 7% down, right? We've only moved 3% in the day so far. We're just in this little range. And yeah, if we get a signals that things are rounding off, we know price is probably going to move at least 5%. So it's got some room to move just based on its typical movement. So I think that's pretty cool. We're check out the link, and yeah, do what you want with it, but it's cool data.